I've been getting a few emails over the past week. One gentleman has an issue with his, I believe it was a Cutlass or something, I can't remember. Going up a hill, car starts to surge, you get sent back into your seat constantly. You wonder if you're going to make the hill. And the gentleman asked, have I ever experienced this? Yes, of course, all the time, it happens. Usually, over my experience of driving nothing but full-size rear-wheel drive vehicles with carburetors, is that if this goes bad, if it gets gummed up, you're going to have performance issues. It's going to happen to you. Yes, there are times where I have went up a hill or a grade and the car starts to surge, starts to lose power. You know, I'm thinking to myself, uh-oh. And eventually, if it gets really bad, the car might stall. What is basically happening is that your carburetor bowl is running low on fuel, and literally the vehicle is running itself out of fuel. The fuel pump can't pump enough fuel to the carburetor, mainly because of a clogged fuel filter. Very straightforward, right? It happens. So once you change it, you're good. I usually find when I change a fuel filter, I'm good for a year, year and a half. If you change a fuel filter and all of a sudden 2 weeks later down the road, you're having the same issues again, you may want to change your grade of fuel. If you're running 87 octane from this one area, and you know, maybe run some Supreme in it for a change. I usually run premium fuel in my vehicles at least twice a year. It's good for them. But yes, I have experienced this, and today I will show you how to change a fuel filter. I'm pretty sure I've covered this many times before, but I will show you how to do it and what wrenches are required in order to do this task. And yes, it will cause performance issues if it gets really clogged up with impurities. Another thing I'd like to mention real quickly here. If you are like me, where you fill up the tank and then drive and then let the fuel level go below a quarter of a tank before your next fill up, what could happen is the sediment and whatever crap at the bottom of your tank is actually getting pumped through the fuel lines and into the carburetor and is gumming this up. If you have a tendency of running your car severely low on fuel to the point where the tank is literally dry, what is happening is everything at the bottom of that tank is getting pumped into the carburetor. And if you keep doing that, what's going to happen is you're going to have to get your carburetor overhauled. I've had to overhaul my carburetors too at some point. Now, if you change your fuel filter 2 days later, you're having performance problems again, there's a good chance your carburetor might need an overhaul. We're not doing that today. I'm going to show you how to change your fuel filter in your car. What you're going to want to do, pop your hood. This hood is one of those, you got to pound it to open it kind of things. Like, you know what I mean, eh? One of those kind of jobs. Okay. Heavy hood. Alright, so first things first, we're going to take off our air breather. Very straightforward. We're going to set that puppy aside. Next, we're going to disconnect any vacuum lines, the heat riser pipe, everything else that is attached to the carburetor. We're going to remove this puppy right here. We're going to set the air cleaner assembly aside. Another thing to do is, as well is to check your air breather element, your filter. Make sure all that is in good condition. Check your electrical wires. Early models didn't have these. These really didn't come into play until emissions came in. What you're going to want to do, grab yourself a 1-inch wrench and a 5/8 wrench. Now, technically you're supposed to use flare nut wrenches. I do not have Imperial flare nut wrenches. So believe me, save yourself the carpal tunnel syndrome and typing a nasty comment saying that, hey, you're supposed to be using flare nut wrenches. I know. If I had them, I would. I only have metric flare nut wrenches. This won't fit. Metric wrenches will not fit on this. But this will do just as good. Okay, so 1-inch wrench as a backup. Let that puppy hang there. 5/8 wrench on the fuel inlet. Okay, we can disconnect this Wolf-Pup right here. We'll let that hang out of the way. With our backup wrench and our 5/8 wrench here, we can loosen the fuel line that is coming from the fuel pump to the carburetor. And then we can go ahead and use our 1-inch wrench to disconnect this fitting here, which has our fuel filter inside. The evening sun. I imagine that sun is burning a pretty good image into that video camera right about now. I would advise making sure the engine has been sitting for a few hours. If you just came from a long drive, you might want to let your car sit for at least a half hour. Half hour to an hour at least, minimum, before you continue to work with the fuel system. You are going to have fuel leaking out of this, so make sure your engine is completely cool. At least half hour to an hour. Set that aside there. Now with our backup wrench, or 1-inch, we're going to go ahead and loosen that. Now some will ask, do you need thread tape to put back on here? No. It's not under substantial amount of pressure. Carbureted lines are not like fuel injection. Fuel injection needs a substantial amount of pressure in order for it to work properly. Not on a carburetor. Carburetor usually only has around 12 to 15 pounds of pressure in the fuel lines. Usually it's just from the fuel pump up, not from the fuel pump down to the tank. Okay, so now we're loosening off the final component, which is holding our fuel filter in place. There is a spring inside there. You're going to have fuel leaking at this point, so and here's our old filter. If the spring comes out with the filter, that's okay. If it doesn't, just leave it inside. It doesn't have to come out. You just leave it in there. If you're not sure what kind of fuel filter your vehicle requires, your carburetor requires, there's a shorter fuel filter, and then there's a long fuel filter. If you don't know what one is required for your carburetor, just go out and buy both of them. Buy a long one and a short one. Then when you dismantle your carburetor, then you know. Then you're not running back to your auto parts store or having to put your carburetor back together just so you can drive to your auto parts store, or going next door to borrow your neighbor's car. Just buy both of them. And then next time you'll know. Okay, so a comparison between the old one and the new one. Yeah, you can tell. And what you're going to want to do is make sure that the opening with the rubber gasket goes in like this. Don't put the flat end. I've done this before, and I imagine many other car enthusiasts have screwed up and just won't admit to it, but they have. Is put the solid end in this way and start the car. Not going to work like that. So once the job is complete, what I normally do, woohoo, messy, okay, is I keep track of my fuel economy and service records in this little booklet here I made. Okay, alright, here's all my fuel economy. If I go back here, maintenance oil and filter. And if I go to the very back, I have a little section where I mark down, if I can get to it, replacement parts. So on September 23rd of this year, I replaced the water pump. Part number I didn't write in, mileage, and any adjustments that needed to be made. I actually did make adjustments that I should have written in here, and that would have been my fan belts, because I had to remove the fan belts. So my next thing that I did, which is today, I replaced the fuel filter. So I'm going to write that guy in here. Fuel filter. Today is October the 7th, 2012. This is just a good way of keeping track of how and when I did service to my vehicle. So today, with being October 7th of 2012, I changed the fuel filter. This is the mileage, current mileage that it was done. And under the adjustments section, I said check vacuum hoses, and the 4-barrel damper is sticking. So I sprayed carburetor cleaner. To see if it would loosen it up. And usually that is a remedy, it will loosen it off. Plus I also sprayed linkages. You don't have to get in details with this. I just like doing it for something to do. Sprayed linkages. It's a good idea to keep track of everything.